EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365, a big Wednesday edition here on the show after a massive contract extension comes in yesterday in Eagle Land. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
Doing well. Wish I got that ACH that Saquon got, but I think we all wish that. Other than that, it's all good. All good in Eagles land. Saquon Barkley with the big extension about 15, 16 months before anybody else would think about it. So I think that's the biggest point I tried to make, is the proactive nature of the Philadelphia Eagles continues. That's, if you wanted to boil down the secret to their success, besides having a bunch of good players, that's it. And that's what people don't copy, and that's what people should copy.
Yeah, and well, they did it. They got ahead of the game, and they gave Saquon Barkley a 2-year, $41.2 million extension with $36 million fully guaranteed at signing. The contract is also laced with incentives, up to $15 million worth of incentives. And some of the cap numbers out there are, they're fluctuating. Some people say they're real. Some people say they're not. So we'll see what the cap hits come down.
It's not filed, so I don't know how anybody could say they're real. But I'm pretty confident to say that the cap number's coming down for this year.
Yeah, because some people are saying there's no way the cap number's coming down.
Oh, there's a way.
Yeah,
there's a way. Just be patient.
Yeah, we'll see what it is. Maybe not as big as we originally thought. Originally, we thought it was around $6 million plus of cap savings. We'll see what it ends up being. But John, what do you think of the move, objectively speaking? Just your opinion on the move. I mean, I have seen some people say, "Well, what are you jumping ahead of a running back for?" All these things. Eagles don't typically pay guys on past performance. I think this is still a future projection here on what Saquon can be for the next couple of years. But your thoughts on the contract coming in when it did, and the size of the contract?
Yeah, we could go 3 hours with the size of the contract, and boy, it's just the talking points about contracts, not just Saquon Barkley, everybody, are just wrong in the NFL. I had NFL radio on before I popped on here. It's just embarrassing the way people talk about this stuff. It should be, at this point, it should be a real, and I'm talking about the people in the industry, talking about average annual value, more important than fully guaranteed money, and all this. You'll see it starting next week, and all these contract numbers that come out, and people are saying, "How could you give out this contract and get salary cap relief?" Wait, be patient. I guarantee it's coming. Everybody can keep this clip if they want to keep it. I guarantee it's coming. The Eagles rewarded the player. There's no doubt about that. They set the market. They set the market because they want to set the market. They don't want to be reactive. They want to They want to be proactive. They're comfortable with this number for the next 2 years. And that's what it is, really, the next 2 years. And they wanted to reward the player. That's part of it as well. But, the Eagles aren't just saying, "Oh, hey, we won the Super Bowl. Let's give this money to it's all very calculated still. And it's helpful to the Eagles and where they're going from a roster building philosophy. All these moves are not linear. I mentioned, as we did our football 24/7, it's about the big picture. They understand where the market is going to go because of the raising salary cap, not only this year, but next year and the year after.
Right.
They understand where the window is, and they did it with Landon Dickerson. They did it with Jalen Hurts. They did it with Lane Johnson back in the day. They want to set the market when they have to set the market. And they don't have a problem doing that because they know where it's going. And it's going up. And that's where they surpassed the Dallas Cowboys, who, finally got one of their younger players done. And that's probably finally realizing, hey, you know what? We better catch up to the way the Eagles do things, or at least try to catch up. It's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen because they're not disciplined enough. But I go back to that Joe Burrow quote earlier in this offseason. This is part of it as well. Well, the Eagles are paying everybody. That helps too, because as free agency starts, and I said, don't, pay attention to the calendar and when they
Yeah.
did this a week ahead of free agency, because they look really good to the players and agents and say, I want to be in business with the Philadelphia Eagles, but they don't pay everybody. They're not going to pay some players here that people are going to the defensive players that might upset some people. They don't pay everybody, but that's the perception. And the perception's greater than the reality. And when you do things like this, 15 or 16 months of when other people might do it, it gets noticed around the league. But I wouldn't be worried about the guaranteed money. I wouldn't be worried about the average annual value. And trust me on this. Trust me, they're getting cap relief in the short term.
Cap relief in the short term and a big payday for Saquon. Obviously, well-deserved by Saquon Barkley, and that will keep the all-pro running back in Philly 4 years to come, at least another 2 years, and we will see how he progresses from there. But look, I mean, you mentioned it with Howie being so ahead of everybody, John. It's a masterclass. How much credit does Jeffrey Lurie deserve in this? Because this is a lot of money, man, that they give up front, and I just don't know if other teams, like you said, you brought up the Cowboys. Are they too stupid to do it this way, or are they simply unwilling to deposit cash at the level that Jeffrey Lurie deposits?
Well, there's cash poor teams and there's non-cash poor.
Yeah, Dallas isn't cash poor.
They're not cash. They're not cash poor. They could do it. They choose not to do it. Like Cincinnati's the team I always point to. They got problems because they literally need to take out loans, because when you guarantee somebody money, that has to go in escrow.
Right.
You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to pay him flippantly." That's got to go in escrow. Obviously, the bonus up front, whatever that is, the fully guaranteed money at signing, that's got to go directly into the account of the player. But everything else, whether it's future roster bonuses that are guaranteed at certain points of the league year or certain points of the contract, that has to go in escrow too. It's not like we'll get to it at the time when we get to it. No, you have to have that cash flow on hand. And
so in other words, $36 million went into escrow yesterday.
Well, 36, if you believe the reports, and again, we'll see the real contract. 36 million guaranteed. He's getting a bunch of that up front. He's getting certainly more than half of it up front.
Meaning on signing, they deposit that stuff right in his account.
Exactly. And then the rest, whatever is roster bonuses, if there is, I find it very hard to believe it's 36 million guaranteed at signing, but it might be. They're going to pay him that money, so it doesn't really matter. But either way, it's what isn't guaranteed on signing has to go in escrow. So that's where teams like Cincinnati, Las Vegas, most notably, those are the two teams everybody points to, because everybody who owns an NFL team is rich compared to individual people. There's different types of rich. There's Stan Kroenke, Jerry Jones rich, and then there's, Mark Davis rich. And there's a big difference in between the two. And guys like Kroenke and Jones can do whatever they want if they want to do it. And that's where Jeffrey Lurie deserves the credit, because he allows the Eagles to operate this way. And there's a lot of teams that just don't have the confidence, and they're concerned about, look at the number of touches. What if it goes wrong? That kind of stuff you hear from because that's conventional thinking. That's conventional wisdom. That's the way 31 other teams think.
Right.
Why are you doing this when you don't have to do it? Well, you're doing it to be proactive, to set the market. This player is going to be there for 2 years. Even if things go wrong, even if he has a bad year next year, you're going to run it back one more time. So why wait and pay more down the road when you have to would have had to work something out after next season? The Eagles were comfortable with the number. It makes the player happy, because the player wakes up and sees all these all people focused on the wrong things. Most guaranteed, highest paid running back of all time, average at 4 years, yada, yada, yada. So he's happy. The agent's happy, Ed Berry, because he looks great.
Yep.
And the Eagles sit there smiling and set the market, and everybody else. So if there's a, Derrick Henry's getting older, but if a younger back, if Bijan Robinson is up and it's time for him to get paid, and now they're gonna go to their particular team, Atlanta, and say, well, this is what Saquon got, so we want to go above that.
I think there's an extra, maybe I'm wrong on this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I do think there might be a little bit of an extra level of respect shown to Saquon here, and we'll see what the numbers are. But you set the market.
They're definitely rewarding the player for the
Well, I'm
year.
saying, like, you set the market on Landon Dickerson. Like, guards are getting paid, right? You set the market at a quarterback. Quarterbacks are getting paid. You set the market at a wide receiver. More wide receivers are getting paid every single year. Running back was kind of one of those positions where it was teetering, where people weren't getting those crazy market-setting deals. Like, I would say to you, I don't know if a running back will make more than $20 million by the time Saquon's done. I don't know.
They will. They will.
You think
because
so?
you're setting the market. That's how the NFL works. That's just how it works. And the Eagles wanted to set the market in this particular thing because their philosophy is that if you wait, you're going to pay more. And the Dallas Cowboys prove that every stinking year.
Right.
They literally prove that every year. So this is the Eagles' attempt to set the market. Not attempt, they did. And you can look at it every position. And it happens at running back, just to a lesser level.
Right, a little bit of a lesser level. Yeah, Eagle Ness brings up a good name. I could see like Jahmyr Gibbs. But that was my point. I don't see as many running backs that are going to be, top market guys.
Well, you're always talking about it, individual positions. Like when Jefferson set the market, the non-quarterback market, you're talking about a small group of players. Nobody was going over Jefferson until Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase will go over him. There's always a very few. And sometimes people believe that the Eagles set markets on players they shouldn't. Now, you can make an argument, but it's been successful for them. But it happens at every position. It's just lesser. Now, if you want to talk about Saquon Barkley's value to the Philadelphia Eagles, because I know a lot of people have talked about that versus how many receivers get $20 million a year, which again, right off the bat, the debate is off base because who cares what the average annual value is? It's about fully guaranteed money. But even if you want to go that route, there's like 20 receivers who still make more. And that's about the value of the position. That's about the value of the position. And that's just the way it is. It's like, Zach Bone versus Milton Williams, same thing. It's just not as high profile, so people don't focus on it. Defensive tackle is going to get more money than a linebacker at the top of the market.
Right.
It's just the way, you can argue the NFL's wrong. That's fine. But that's just the way it is. So running back is still way behind, say, wide receiver. And then you have the argument, should it be? Because Saquon's more valuable to the Eagles than the vast majority of those 20 or so receivers.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, John. Like, Saquon touched the ball, 30 times a game last year? A.J. Brown got, 10 targets a game if he was lucky? I mean, I'm not saying that the A.J.'s not valuable. I'm just saying it is funny how the valuations break out, how they're not, doesn't all line up perfectly.
No. But if you ask me, and I think this is proven throughout the league more with the quarterbacks than anything else, but Saquon's a perfect example of this. The most valuable of all, and I'll say it to my dying breath, is the offensive line.
Right.
You just saw the most valuable player completely shut down in the Super Bowl because they couldn't block the Eagles' defensive front. And Patrick Mahomes couldn't do anything.
Right.
Now, there's a bunch of Eagles fans that'll, puff out their chest and say, we stopped Patrick Mahomes. He's not that good. By the way, you should never do that. It's an old wrestling trick, never downgrade your opponent because that means you're lesser.
Right.
No, you dominated. You dominated the
best
greatest
player
quarterback of the generation,
exactly.
the greatest coach quarterback, and you completely shut them down. And why did you shut them down? The same reason they lost the other Super Bowl they lost, because Tampa Bay shut them down because they couldn't block the front. And that, to me, it's about offensive line first. It's always about offensive line first. Even lesser quarterbacks, Sam Darnold, one of the things, and I've been a big Sam Darnold guy, and he fell apart and it's more about Jordan Mailata telling me how good the Rams front was, and Lane Johnson to a degree. They couldn't block them. And, then what happens to Patrick Mahomes and everybody's focused on because he was a bust and this and that. Any quarterback, Tom Brady lost 2 Super Bowls because of the same reason. Any quarterback, if you can't block, and we have a 6-year sample size with Saquon Barkley, very good player in New York. He wasn't the player who was here.
Oh, not even close. Not even close.
Now, to Saquon's credit, the Eagles had great running games with Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift as well.
Right, and he took
but it wasn't that good. So he elevated, it works both ways, and that's part of the greatness. But I mean, if you're being honest, and this is everywhere, this is not just Philadelphia, the offensive line is the most important of all.
Right.
Because all these skill position players, they can't do shit if you're not blocking the people to let them do shit.
Absolutely. Look for trenches in the draft, everybody. I'm with Johnny Mack on this one, man. Build those trenches. We don't need any more sexy position players. Give me those trench guys. John, that leads me to my next point, and I loved the way you explained yesterday on Football 24/7 how moves aren't linear, and many people try and make them be linear. Like, oh, they extended here and freed up cap, so they're going to go and do this. And I think there's an element to that because they are going to make other moves, but in a vacuum, the Eagles have a philosophy here that they go to. Now, with that being said, who do you think it could be the next couple of moves here that the Eagles are going to go? I mean, you just brought up offensive line. Well, we got a big free agent on the offensive line right now. I brought up a chart yesterday, Johnny Mack, from Jimmy Kempski, all right? And I'll pull it up on the show right now real quick before we get Mike Gill on. And this offense is largely under contract for the foreseeable future, with the exception of really Dallas Goedert. Cam Jurgens is going to get an extension here probably this summer, and then Mekhi Becton. So they're in a really good position with this offense. And based on what you just said, but with the offensive line being of importance, you think Mekhi Becton's the next domino to fall?
Not necessarily. I think Zach Bond is the priority. And we'll see how that goes. And even, depending on what kind of discussions they have with Lane Johnson as far as how long he wants to go, they might even try to tweak his deal to extend his deal if he wants to. And you have to start thinking about how much guaranteed money is left for Lane. So, he continues to play at such a high level.
How old is Lane, man? Because he looks like he has a lot left in the tank.
Well, he's 35.
He doesn't look like he's slowing down at all.
But, that's a position where you can play later and play at a high level.
Right.
Andrew Woodward.
He's turning 35 in May.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's never played at a higher level than he did last year. He was phenomenal. But he's a guy that I think – yeah, and with Mekhi, I said there's some other issues and, long-term concerns over his knee. You saw him leave some games, come back, bite through some things.
Right.
So there's some complications there, and I think they'll have a walk-away number. But, look, I think, he came here for a reason to work with Jeff Stoutland, similar to some other players, Isaiah Rodgers, for a different reason. But They have some loyalty to this organization. So I think the Eagles want him back, but I think they want him back at again, the Joe Burrow sentiment. They pay everybody. Well, no, they're still disciplined. And I think Mackay is more of a disciplined player. They want him back, but if they can't get him back, we talked to Devin Jackson about the draft. Anthony Belton's already a guy they're coming in. Very similar player.
Right.
At least projection wise.
Yeah, and by the way, Tyler Steen was no stiff last year. He wasn't Mackay, but he wasn't awful.
Yeah, I think though what Mackay Becton showed them is you want a certain type of player,
right?
As long as Saquon's going to be back there, and I think they
want
want a really, really big body player inside. I think Landon's already that, and you have an undersized center. It's always funny to call 300-pounders undersized.
I know, right?
And they've had that for years, but and I think that clicked with them last year. Brandon Brooks was phenomenal for years. I mean, he was really, really big. Mackay dwarfs them all, but and they want him back, but it's not one of those things where they're going to get him at all costs types of things.
Big contract for Saquon Barkley to remain in Philly. We'll see what the final numbers are when the contract is filed, but he is here to stay. A big deal. And the offseason is now in full swing as we inch closer here, a week out from free agency, probably 50-something days away from the NFL draft. So we're moving right along and looking forward to talking to Mike Gill coming up next here on Birds 365. Before we get to Mike, I do want to tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. Go and check them out. It's betus.com.pa. How many of you are taking a future on the Eagles Super Bowl after yesterday's move? I know some of you are thinking about it. Go and get your money's worth now. Put that money in on a repeat. Will it happen? We'll see. Go and do it at betus.com.pa. That's betus.com. Use the promo code YouTube150. Gives you 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. You get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000 to deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. The other fun thing, if you're a sports bettor out there, March Madness right around the corner. BetUS will have all your March Madness needs, so go and check them out now and use that promo code to get your extra sign-up bonus and enjoy all your betting needs at BetUS. So big thanks to them for sponsoring the show today. Let's move on and get to Mike Gill on Birds 365 here. He is joining us now from 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him at Mike Gill Show on YouTube, on X, on all the platforms. Watch his show on YouTube and listen on 97.3. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Wednesday morning?
Well, I'm not $41 million richer.
I said I didn't get that ACH in the bank account, but
no,
Saquon did. Your thoughts, your immediate thoughts.
Well, John, you were on with me when it happened yesterday, and we were talking about the rare time when your boss says, "Hey, man, you did a really good job. Here you go. Here's a raise." It doesn't happen often. I find it interesting because the reaction that I got from a lot of people that texted into my show yesterday, there were a lot of questions. Why? Why now? Why do this? And as the show kind of materialized, it was a lot of, you got the best season you're probably ever going to get from this guy. I mean, he gives you 2,000 plus yards, just a historic year. You win the Super Bowl. The Eagles are basically paying him for his best season, not for topping his best season down the road. Does anybody watching right now think that there's a better season in Saquon than the one we just saw? Now, this isn't to criticize it. It is kind of, though, like, hey, we love Saquon. He's our guy. But on the other side, it's like, are you ever going to get a 2,000-yard season? So there's got to be some financial gain for Philadelphia. This is an interesting take because 3 years ago, I guess it was, or 4 years ago now, you got 18.5 sacks from Hassan Reddick. They didn't say to him, "Hey, man, great season. Here's some money."
Right.
They made him play on that deal, and then he did not have nearly the same season, and then they traded him. So the Eagles are really betting and banking, and probably with good reason, to say, we got a 2,000-yard season, and there's something pretty similar coming down the pipeline. Because if not, I look back to that Reddick. An edge rusher is a position they value. And they said, nah, I'm not coming to you for more money. You're going to have to sit and wait. So I find this whole thing to be a very interesting timing, which again goes back to they must have some financial gain. Now, I don't know what the contract details.
There we go, Mike. That's what I wanted to say, because you've been doing this for a long time. And it frustrates me, and I'm not blaming fans because of the way it's delivered to them. It's embarrassing. Like everybody, can you point to a bad Howie Roseman, Jake Rosenberg, and now Bryce Johnson contract over the past 10 years? Now, when you misevaluate a player,
yes, I can.
But it's misevaluation. Bryce Hall.
Well, the Alshon Jeffrey one, I don't think they needed to sign, right? Is that the one where
you could argue Bradbury too, but yeah,
no,
again, John, misevaluation.
I'm saying contract. Everybody misses on players. That's low-hanging fruit. You get the player wrong. If Saquon gets hurt, blah, 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 this looks like a bad contract. I'm not saying that. I'm saying bad contract from the team perspective, from a business standpoint. They don't do that. They don't do that. I'm stunned by it. So many people say they did this for a reason. Now, did they reward the player? Yes. That's one of like 17 different things. And the first 16 are about the business end. They want to get ahead of the market. They want to set the market. They're comfortable where the market's going to be in 2 years. And this is what we want to pay this player, as others, whether it's Bijan Robinson comes up or somebody brought up Jahmyr Gibbs, whatever. They set the market. They set the market with Jalen Hurts. They set the market with Landon Dickerson. They put it with where they're comfortable.
Hey, listen, I certainly don't. It's a funny situation where they do right by the player, and then that kind of gets, the Sixers did this. They went to Joel Embiid. They didn't have to give him the money. They chose to, and that's blown up in their face. Here's a similar situation. They didn't have to give Saquon the money. They're choosing to. Both ownership groups are making calculated decisions here based on financials. The money to Embiid is so that he got a 3-year extension. If they wait, they had to give him a 4 or 5-year extension. So they were banking that we only want to give him 3 years. They didn't want to wait for him to qualify for 4 or 5. That blows up in your face. They get criticized. Here, they did not have to approach Saquon Barkley. They could have waited until he had another great year last year and then approached him, similar to what they did not do with Reddick. So, again, the $36 million that he gets for signing, that lump sum of money says there's got to be some sort of cap relief somewhere down the road. They kick something down this way. So it is obviously set up. They didn't just say, you know what, Barkley's such a great dude.
Yeah.
Here you go. They like Barkley.
I'm amazed by how many people think that they just blew up their salary cap situation. They don't do that.
No. And here's the other part about this. I tried yesterday. Okay, I'll ask everybody watching and you two guys. The Eagles, let's say they got cap relief right now for this particular free agency. I can't think of one free agent they have to target other than their own guys, unless they wanted to make a trade and then extend that guy in the trade. And I'm sure you guys can figure out where I'm going with that. But if you're trying to get this cap relief to say, we want to be players in free agency, that's certainly not it, unless they just want to have the relief to sign their own guys back. There's not one guy in free agency that you're like, if I said pick one guy that you want to make sure you target, there's not one guy. They don't need really anything other than if somebody in their own house leaves.
Yeah, free agency is not that great. And, we've talked about that in the past. I do think people get way hyper-focused on one move means they're going to do something else. They're making room for Myles Garrett. And, the Eagles' philosophy is more universal than that. There's Slay. We all knew something was going to happen with Slay. It had to. Bradbury. All this is a part of it. You'll see it whether they re-sign Zach Bond or not. All this is part of the plan. And there's many contingencies off the tentacles of that plan. But so many people say, oh, they're doing this because they want to do this. That's generally not the way the Eagles work. It's more universal than that. And, you know, that's what they're successful at. That's the biggest thing. That's what I wrote about on Sports Illustrated. People copy, you know, everybody calls the NFL a copycat league, and it is. People copy Vic Fangio schemes. They copy, oh, we want to be like Sean McVay. We want to do this. We want to hire the guy he had coffee with a week ago because we want that. They don't copy the right things, man. The philosophy of the Eagles is what they should be copying.
They should be, but one difference is, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but Howie has to be able to go to Jeffrey and say, hey, I need a check for $36 million.
Well, he's part of it.
I bring him up
all the time, Mike.
Mike Brown's not writing the check for $36 million today.
Can't.
Most likely Jerry Jones is not writing that check for $36 million. He could, but he chooses not to.
Yeah.
That's why Dallas always has problems with their cap. They wait too long. They don't know when to approach. They let the guys get to free agency. Then they get to the open market. Then they have to overpay to bring them back. And then the cycle continues where they have guys so overpaid that they can't compete at the highest of high levels. Where Philadelphia, he says, Jeffrey, can you write me a check for $36 million? And then Jeffrey says, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Not every owner is doing that. So while Howie does get all the Howie season and Howie this and Howie that.
I bring it up as much as possible, even though I don't want to blow up the ego of Jeffrey Lurie anymore, but I bring up it as much as possible. He does not get the credit he deserves because there are few owners. And by the way, you bring up the Joel Embiid comparison. The Eagles wouldn't have done that because of his medical history, but if that blows up, you know, with Saquon from a medical standpoint, because this is a very violent game.
And he's had some injury issues in his past.
Yeah. If that blows up, if this contract blows up, he will not get fired. Because Howie understands, Jeffrey understands, things like that are going to happen in this league, and they're willing to take that chance. Scared money don't make money, is the old saying.
Yes. And
all these teams act scared. Oh, we don't have to do that. We got 15 months.
Right. Well, listen, I remember years ago, this is when they signed Mailata. And Mailata was, you know, he had the one good year. He was kind of an unknown. And they approached him. And, you know, he didn't really have a resume. But their point was, let's get to him before he becomes the best tackle in the league. Now they have Mailata at under market value.
They did it. They did it twice with Mailata.
Right.
They even surprised me with Mailata because they went to him so early. I'm like, really? You're going,
well,
AJ.
Right. It's like you have to take the chance that you have trusted your instincts and your scouts to say, what I just saw, we think we should pay. And then if we pay him now, we don't have to let him get to free agency and then pay him as the top guy. And that's where like a team like Dallas says, wow, this guy's really good. And then he does it again. And then and then you're like, oh man, now we have to pay him at the top. The Eagles pay Mailata and he's like a completely underpaid player. And that's how you keep together a team. Now they did this back in the Reed era and you would have guys holding out because they were unhappy because they were getting underpaid and they wanted more money. Brian Westbrook, I think maybe, you know, a lot of the guys. But
it started with
Brown and some others.
It started with Joe Banner, another guy. That's really where it started. Joe,
you know, the other thing here too is the Eagles deserve a lot of credit because this philosophy doesn't really work if you don't draft correctly. I mean, think about the defense, guys: Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Moro Ajomo, Nolan Smith. Anybody else I'm missing? They're all playing well on rookie contracts.
Reed Blankenship.
I mean, he's not a rookie contract, but similar, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, these are all guys that they drafted and then had to make decisions on. I mean, you can even go to Josh Sweat was a guy they drafted at one point and then had to pay him. And then they got him to take a pay cut for God's sakes.
Yeah. But I mean, getting guys to contribute on rookie contracts, that's value right there. And they got a lot of them on defense. So it's their evaluation of players is also very good right now.
Which, by the way, is a complete 180 from where they were, 5 years ago, where people listen. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching here, probably many who don't want to raise their hand, that said they hated Howie. They wanted him gone. And it was all because of a handful of
I still got the hate mail, Mike. I'm sure you do. I don't know if you
Mike, you were one of the early ones as well, calling Howie a top 5 right on this program. I remember it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been way before that. Listen, even going back to the Rigger miss, you're going to miss. You're going to make mistakes. Is that an egregious one? In hindsight, it is. But at the time, people forget in that draft, Justin Jefferson wasn't the first wide receiver taken. He wasn't the second wide receiver taken.
Yeah, a bunch of people missed on Justin Jefferson.
And that's part of the thing is, look, you have to live and be okay with the fact that you're going to make mistakes. But what do? I end up with A.J. Brown. I did not this did not work out for me. It blew up in my face. He also missed on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Now, that wasn't a first-round pick.
Andre Dillard.
That was another guy, right? They traded for Dillard. They had a period of misses. And guess what? They're going to happen again. They are on such a hot streak of drafting and signing guys. At some point, you're going to bring a guy, and they have, by the way, they have signed Justin Edwards and Terrell Edmonds and,
Bryce
guys
Huff.
who have just not
Bryce
worked
Huff
out
last
for them.
year.
Bryce Huff so far has not worked out for them. It's going to happen. But what they have done is right now build the coffers a little bit up again where they can afford to make those mistakes.
No doubt about it. It's really impressive what they're doing. Mike, with this being said, this made me think of something interesting because we talked all year about the way this offense looked, the way it was built, where they were allocating the money to in terms of receivers and the passing game. They just doubled down on Saquon Barkley. I think the Eagles are collectively saying, F you to anybody who wants us to be different. And what Mike do you think will come next now? Me and John were just talking about Mekhi Becton. I mean, think about it. You just doubled down on Saquon Barkley to be a running offense, presumably for the next couple of years. Is Mekhi Becton the next order of business, or how do you see it playing out?
I've been saying really since the Super Bowl that whole week afterwards, which was the Dodgers won the World Series, and then they went out and got the top pitcher on the market and then said, you know what, we'll go get the Cy Young Award winner, Blake Snell. And then everybody this offseason can bitch and bemoan that the Dodgers keep getting better. I think that's where Howie wants to go. I think Howie's going to say, look, everybody's talking about the Eagles and how they got all these guys. You got Joe Burrow saying, well, the Eagles will figure out a way to sign their players. I heard TJ Houshmandzadeh the other day saying the Eagles are far and away the best franchise, how they treat their players. Dan Orlovsky saying people want to play for the Eagles. And I think Roseman is going to be the Dodgers. He's going to go out and find ways to make this team aesthetically seem like they're better than they were the year before and have it in people's minds that team just won the Super Bowl and they went out and got this guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if something big is also on the pipeline. I think Vaughn, for me, is interesting because of what they just did with a position that we deemed that they did not value for years. They finally valued that position and what it meant to them. Similar on the defensive side of the ball. And he's dropped some hints about this, the linebacker stuff. He talked about it in the past and they've kind of overlooked it, but they finally got a guy to where he was a huge difference maker on that defense. And they might finally put some money into that position. So Vaughn would be the guy that I think might excite people the most if they brought him back. The other interesting thing would be, I don't know if you guys have talked at all about this A.J. Brown nonsense, but is that even?
Yeah, well, I was going to bring it up, but
okay. Well, the only thing that I can come up with that would possibly pass the sniff test would be the smell test. I guess would be, look, we just put $41 million more in running back.
Yeah, that's it.
We're not saying A.J. Brown isn't worth it or isn't good, but we're paying him. And we don't really need to pay that much money if we're going to commit to the run game as much as we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do think, it seems like New England and everybody around New England wants to create a self-fulfilling prophecy and being able to trade for A.J. Brown. But you bring up the point. I mean, it is the point. Do you really need A.J. Brown, the receiver of the level of A.J. Brown, if you're going to play the way you play on offense last year?
Right. Right. If you're saying, hey, we paid this guy before we had Saquon Barkley here. Now we have Saquon Barkley, and we're paying a guy who's very good, but we don't really need very good. What can we get in return?
I would not advocate that.
Yeah, I would not advocate it. Not advocating. I'm just trying to find a.
But no, I'd like the devil, because one thing I wanted to bring up too with you, and we'll continue with AJ in a second, but because you brought up the defense and you brought up Joe Burrow, and I bring up Joe Burrow's good. The Eagles pay everybody, essentially, is what he said. Well, no, they don't. And if things go the way we think they're going to go, they're not going to pay Milton Williams. They're not going to pay Josh Sweat. And they're going to try to reload, whether it's young players. Maybe they hit the home run with Myles Garrett, whatever, trade market. However, if they do go cheap on defense again, with the exception of Zach Bond, I think they're going to get Zach Bond done. This was the #1 defense in the NFL. This defense was better than this offense where they pay everybody.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I play a devil's advocate. Why? Why?
Listen, no, again, not advocating to move AJ Brown. When I heard this yesterday, I kind of, I thought it was just people making like possible things up. Like, hey, why don't you try to call Phil? Like, okay, I don't know why Philadelphia would be interested in doing that. I think AJ adds to the run game. His presence on the field can only add to the running game. You might say, hey, we're paying him to catch 110 balls, or when we paid him, it was to be a guy to catch 110 balls, and now we don't need him to do that. So now we can afford, maybe value-wise, that's what they're looking at.
You can make an argument. That's the problem with football. You can make an argument. There's so few games, paralysis by overanalysis. You can talk yourself into that stuff. You can say, well, we're a running team. We don't need the top tier receiver. When Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown were on the field together, they didn't lose a stinking game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They were 18. Is there more that meets the eye here, everybody? I mean,
when the question was asked to me, I was almost perplexed as how is this even a question? Like, no, you don't trade AJ Brown. That's ridiculous. So,
well, then you have his personality and the way the people take some of his comments and all that stuff. And, I do think a lot of it is New England trying to wish it into existence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Coward said it too. I would move off AJ Brown.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but from what when
he does like Mike Vrabel. He does like Mike Vrabel. AJ.
Yeah, he played in Tennessee for Vrabel. According yesterday, when the question was asked to me on the air, I kind of got blindsided because I hadn't seen anything about it to this level yet. And I guess the report came from Matthew Berry.
Matthew Berry and then Tom Curran, who's a little bit more plugged in, I would say.
I was like, Curran. The fantasy football guy is now.
It wasn't just Matthew Berry.
Got it.
But even Tom was on a radio. It was more, again, and I suffer from this as well. When you do a show, sometimes you're speculating, but you're a reporter, and people say, well, Tom Curran said. He wasn't saying. He was basically talking about the history of AJ with Mike Vrabel and that kind of stuff. And it would make some sense for that perspective. And he's probably thinking about it the same way we just thought about it, which was, well, they don't need a big time wide receiver if they're going to play the way they play.
2 of them. Yeah, they got 2 of them.
Two of them. Yeah. And you have Jahan Dotson, who's more cost effective. And how do you get a player like Myles Garrett? You got to give something up. Might not be trading AJ Brown to Cleveland. Might be trading A.J. Brown to New England to get draft capital, get Myles Garrett.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So those would kind of be the dominoes of, if you're thinking bigger picture, hey, I need to get draft capital to be able to do this. I don't know that that's what they have to do, but I personally do not think it's necessary, nor do I see it happening.
No, they don't lose when he's on the field. When he's off the field, they lose.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
I'm not moving off AJ Brown. I get the talking point of like, you're a running team. Why do you need him? But I think there's more. Like I said, I think there's more.
Right. That was
there.
the only way I could say if this was an actual legitimate thing that because again, the thing that I had read or saw was that the Patriots, not the Eagles, were like, hey, AJ Brown's available. Anybody want to call us? No, it's like doing due diligence. Hey, you guys got two really good receivers. You sure you want to keep both those guys? Maybe something that, okay, I could play along with that. I don't think the Eagles are actively saying, call us. We're here to listen.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know the contract, but I would speculate that it's not the easiest contract in the world to move, probably. I mean, they just signed a massive $32 million per year extension with a lot of money guaranteed. I mean, how easy would that contract be? I mean, just to entertain the idea, which, by the way, I don't think the Eagles are entertaining the idea.
Yeah, it's not.
You're not saving any money. I mean,
the dead money would be with a trade pre-June 1st would be 31.5, and you'd lose about 14 million of cap space. Post June 1st, you can do it, but generally that's not when teams would be working to make that trade. You want to make that trade early in the season because you want the draft picks. You don't want to wait to June 1st. So yeah, it's very, very unlikely.
Not happening.
Yeah,
I don't see it happening at all. Mike, I want to ask you about Slay was released earlier in the week. Bradbury as well, and we'll talk about that, freeing up a little bit more cap space. But where are you on Darius Slay? Like, if these two sides are willing to tango, do you think Slay should be back? Should they turn the corner and get younger at that position and kind of rely on Ringo, maybe bring back Rodgers? How do you see the cornerback shaking up? Maybe you think Cooper DeJean should go outside. How do you see the cornerback position shaping up this year post Darius Slay?
Well, I'll start with that. No, I think Cooper DeJean playing that nickel spot was a key to why this defense was what it was. It's hard to find those nickel guys. How many guys did they go through? I mean, it seems that
8 or 9.
Other than Avonte Maddox, they haven't been able to find anybody of any competence to play that position. I think we downplay how important that spot is because it's not deemed as high profile. You know, it's like saying we have a great left tackle, but our left guard stinks. You know, the left tackle is deemed to be more important, but if your left guard is no good, then what are you? You still have a problem. The nickel spot, I think what he is able to do in that nickel spot with his athlete, this doesn't mean he could not handle playing outside corner, but because he is so athletic and physical and he has the speed and ability to cover so much in these areas now where teams try to quick passes in the flats and in the slots. That's what these teams try to do, and he takes a lot of that away. So I would like to see them try to keep Cooper in that spot. I know his agent or somebody might say, hey, you can make more money going to the outside.
There we go, Mike.
You're going to be
the business comes into it at some point.
Right. You're going to fight that probably at some point. As for Slay, I asked John this yesterday because, in my mind is, hey, if you want to play, you want to be here, you're going to have to do us a solid. Can we do a Brandon Graham type of deal where we get you, you come back, you're where you want to be, but we can't pay you what you think you're worth. That's not a knock on you. It's just we have other, priorities we have to tend to. Does Darius want to come back and play only at a contract that he thinks is his value? Because if that's the case, the Eagles might say, we can't do that. We could give you a 1 year, I don't know, $6-8 million.
I said 8. Is that too rich for you?
Probably not. No, 1 year at a price like that that's manageable for them for 1 more year. Like, he's the oldest corner in the league. He's like 34, going to be 35 years old, right? I mean, so that is not a normal situation.
I can't imagine he's getting big money anywhere else going to a new situation.
And he has said, now, you could change your mind, but he has said he only wants to play for Philly and or Detroit. They're the only two teams he really seemed to have any interest. He did pretty much insinuate, I think I could play one more. I want to play 1 more year. He said that on the St. Brown Brothers podcast. So he wants to play 1 more, but he's kind of limited to those 2 teams, it sounds like. So if Detroit's not interested, then what? Okay, does Philly have the upper hand here to say, we'll have you back, but here's the deal. Does he sit out or does he just retire? if Philly doesn't give him the deal and Detroit doesn't give him the deal? Or does he then say, you know what, those two teams, I will now expand my search? I definitely think there's a lot of avenues here for Darius, but if you can get him back on the number. Now, the other question is, can he get Rodgers back? If you can get Rodgers back, because Rodgers might think, I'm a starter, I can go someplace else to play as a starter. Right. So can you get him back? And is that the first move, that you go Rodgers first? But does Rodgers want to sign here if you're going to bring Slay back? There's a lot that could go into the decision-making there. Because if you bring Slay back, then Rodgers might say, I don't want to come back and be a backup again.
Yeah, I think Rodgers is going to be easy for the Eagles to get done. I think people are going to be stunned how easy that is. He's just not going to get a lot of money for two reasons. One, size. Two, the gambling suspension. Teams are scared of stupid stuff. Yeah. He's just not going to get a lot of money. So,
because Rodgers, you just said his size, and he's a small guy who doesn't really play nickel. Right. Yeah. He's an outside corner as a small guy. So it's a spot where we didn't get to see an elongated period of him, but when he played, he pretty much
played well.
Did his job. He played his job. But I think a lot of the reason why they play so well, I think DeJean is such a key to that, is that first option in the slot or in the intermediate of the field, he takes so much of that away that you're now forced to kind of go a little bit further, and you have a much better situation because now you're getting to that second option and you can kind of cover the field, with the way they play defense on the back end. So I think Cooper in the slot in that role was a big key to why their defense excelled.
Yeah, and I think with this, I feel like it's, most moves are like this, but it all depends on what happens in free agency. Like, if you tell me we're losing Bond, we're losing Milton Williams, and we're losing Josh Sweat, I'm probably going to be like, all right, bring back Slay. We need some stability on the defense. If you bring back Bond, you get a good edge rusher, all right, then you feel a little bit better. Maybe they traded for Garrett, something like that. You feel all right. Let Slay walk. We can make moves at that position.
But and keep in mind, Slay in that secondary. Cooper second year, Mitchell second year. Mm-hmm. You got some young, the Ringos and the Ricks and all those guys like that have been around here. It seems like forever now. They're all young guys still. He's kind of the one, and you had Bradbury in there too, even though he didn't play, that kind of acted like a coach this year.
Right.
So you'll be losing two pretty prominent voices in that secondary room.
What do you think of Ringo, Mike? Like, his college tape is so impressive, but I just haven't seen it yet at an NFL level. Where are you on him?
Yeah, I mean, he's, you talk to these draft guys and they use like twitchy and, swivel the hips.
Big Howie word.
Yeah. He just seems like, he just seems like he doesn't have that hip, the ability to kind of open fast enough. And I mean, he's a bigger guy. He kind of, I don't know. I just don't think he's a starting corner in this league. He could probably get you by if somebody's hurt for half a game. You put him out there. He's not going to kill you. But if you had to play him all 17 games the whole season, you probably would see a guy who would have some problems, unless he's a technique guy. I mean, a guy like Rasul Douglas was not an athletic corner with great fluidity and the ability to kind of turn, but he became a guy who was very serviceable in the league because he was a technique guy and really kind of has found a niche as a guy who's made a lot of big plays, had a lot of interceptions. Can Ringo, because Ringo in college was a guy whose his athletic traits kind of jumped off the field where
I'll say.
Yeah, exactly.
He was damn good at Georgia. I mean, I watch awesome. SEC football every weekend during this season. He was a good player at Georgia.
Plus, he's good on Vic mentioned he's good on special teams. And, one thing he said, when defensive players are younger, well, two things here. I think people got spoiled by Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and rookies playing at such a high level so early. Usually corners take a little bit of time, and that's what it's taken with Kaylee Ringo.
Yeah.
But boy, he's got a lot of talent. And Vic said, you never find a good defensive player who wasn't good on special teams early in his career. You never. It's like you're not bad on special teams and then become good on defense is what he was trying to say. He's really good on special teams, and
he's so athletic too, right? I mean, that's the thing. But I think his athleticism hasn't really transferred to the outside corner spot on the island out there.
I guarantee the Eagles want him to win the job. If Slay doesn't come back, they want him to win the job, not Rodgers. I guarantee. Doesn't mean he's going to win it, but that's what they want to happen because he's 6'2", 207, long as hell, runs a sub 4.4. He's got everything you need to be a big-time outside corner. But, yeah, does he have the football IQ? Does he have the technique? All that kind of stuff, which is meaningful. At Mike Gill Show, make sure you follow Mike on the X platform. Follow him on YouTube as well. You can watch the Sports Bash, his interviews there, 97.3 South Jersey locally. If you're down the shore, make sure you tune in to Mike Gill 2 to 6 drive time every day. I'll leave it with Vic because I joke around, but I said it last summer and it seems to be true now as well. They're basically the Eagles' philosophy is I'm going to pay everybody on offense and Vic will figure it out on defense. And there's a couple outliers. I think they're going to pay Zach Bond, but
going to have to pay Jalen Carter soon.
Yeah, they're going to pay.
He's getting what? What's he getting? 35 million, 36 million.
He's going to set the market, whatever it is.
And DeJean and Mitchell.
Yeah. Coming down the pike, they're going to have to pay some guys because they were so successful. But right now, it seems like it's Vic will figure it out. Is that too much on Vic Fangio? Wasn't last year.
Well, yeah, because first off, Vic's not a young guy. How many more years are you getting elite level? I mean, and it has to do with the talent too. Now, I think one of the things with the Eagles in their front office, they feel and this is one of the reasons why I think Bond will be the guy they sign. Because they feel comfortable taking an edge rusher. They feel comfortable taking a defensive tackle. Those are two positions they do not mind drafting and spending draft capital on. They don't want to spend draft capital on linebacker if they don't have to. So we'll sign the guy in-house that we feel comfortable with. We'll let the two other guys walk, and we'll restock on the edge and at tackle. Now, that wouldn't prevent them from making a trade to fill a tackle spot or an edge spot. But those are two areas that I think they have a higher hit rate on, that so they can keep replenishing. So is it the pressure on Vic or is it the pressure on the scouting department to keep hitting on edge and on tackle?
That's a good point. That's good because they have hit on young players.
I mean, for years, Milton Williams. I would talk about this on my show the last couple of years. 1 year, I think he had 4 sacks, and I'm like, well, if he got to play more, like if he doubled his snap count, could he be a guy who gets 8 snaps? And then he gets 8, and you're like, well, if he doubled his snap, can he get 12 sacks? And you're just saying, like, if I just kept saying, can I get more Milton Williams? Can I get more Milton Williams? Now, the numbers were never like, whoa, look at this guy. He's got, 10 and a half sacks and 40 tackles, and 10 of them are behind the line of scrimmage. He didn't have like a year like that, but you could certainly see the athleticism. And we heard back in his draft, if you remember his draft process, they said the only other guy who put up numbers like this was Aaron Donald, right? Remember, he was like a workout warrior. So Milton Williams is a guy that, while his numbers and stuff, you might not have memorable moments from him throughout the season. Do they have another guy, Maro Ajomo or Gabe Hall or somebody that they, have had through this pipeline that they think they can get serviceable enough snaps from?
Yeah. And to that point on Vic, it is, I often wonder are even something as little as the injuries late at edge rusher with, he got peppered with questions about, because we've been ingrained with, you got to have 4 edge rushers. And Vic's like, nah, you can use 3. Shut it, basically.
Well, I always ask these type of questions, like maybe it's an old man thing, but did Reggie White ever come off the field?
No.
When did we get to a point where a professional athlete had to be in a rotation? Like, it's like a marvel.
Jalen Carter,
this guy played every snap, and you're like, okay, he probably played both ways at some point of his life. 120, like this whole thing of like he played 95% of the snaps. I'm not impressed by this. Like,
I know.
that's what you're supposed
Well,
to do.
Jalen Carter, everybody was like, well, he only played 500 snaps. Can he do this? Can he do? And Vic's like, yeah, we're going to play him. We're going to play him. He got better.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's not like advocate cutting back. Let's say we hope to see, I joke all the time. Like I talked to Jimmy Lynam when he coached the Sixers. I'd say, Coach, I knew 6 guys on your team. You had Dawkins, Hawkins, Jaminski, Barkley, Rick Mahorn, and Ron Henderson. No one else ever got in the game. That's it. They played like every single minute of every single game, and Ron Anderson was the only guy who checked in. And he would laugh. Guy come, for 3 minutes. Like, these guys played the whole game. Now these NBA teams are going 15 men deep. It's like, come on, let's get back to
Ron Anderson, a good pull. 6-man. Boy, he was good that year.
Ron Anderson, yeah.
Ron Anderson was good.
I gave you the whole lineup, but you gave me Ron Anderson, I gave you the whole lineup.
Yeah. Ron Anderson was a heck of a shooter.
Number 20.
Yeah. Aaron McKee is a 6-man too, after a little bit later.
But, well, it was the Dawkins, Hawkins, Jaminski, Mahorn, the bump and thump team.
Yeah. They got him from Indiana. Was one hell of a 6-man that year.
Yep.
It worked out beautifully.
They could never get out of the second round, those Sixers.
Yeah. Good team, though. Good team.
Trust the
especially
process.
compared to now. Darn good team. So we're going way back. That's like late 80s, I think. Ron Anderson.
Yep, late 80s, early 90s, probably 89, somewhere around there. I was in middle school. Yep, 88, 89, somewhere around there.
Played 82 games. I just looked them up. 82 games as a 6-man, 32 minutes a game, 16 points a game. Ron Anderson. Yeah. Good pull, Mike.
That's a great pull right there. Mike, great stuff, man. We appreciate you joining the show today. Make sure you guys follow him at Mike Gill Show. Go and subscribe to his YouTube channel and listen to him at 97.3 ESPN Down the Shore, the best show, one of the best sports shows really in all the country. Mike, thanks for joining, brother. We appreciate you checking in today and doing it every Wednesday for us. We'll talk to you again next week. All right, brother?
See you guys.
Thanks, bud.
All right. Thanks, Mike. There's Mike Gill joining us here on Birds 365. Great job from Mike Gill. As always,
Ron Anderson. Yeah, that's a good
pull.
One I'm excited by. Probably the only one, but that's one I'm excited by.
That's a good pull. I'll take it. I'll take that type of sports intel from people who have been covering these games for longer than I have. So I'll take it there. Good stuff from Mike Gill, Johnny Mac. I will say the A.J. Brown conversations are just insane. I mean, come on, John. I get it. They're running. We're not trading A.J. fucking Brown.
You got too much time to sit around and think.
Yeah, it's the week before free agency, John. It's the land of anything is possible and talk about every possible scenario, and there are endless amounts of those scenarios. So I will not entertain it. I don't think it's even a thought process in the mind of that front office.
Well, look, if you're going to commit to, and it looks like they're going to commit to what they did last year again, you can, hey, why not get a little bit of cheaper and get more money to pay Zach Bond and Milton Williams? Would you do that? Would you say, all right, get more money to sign Zach Bond and trade for Myles Garrett? Would you do that? That's the interesting part of the offseason. Bottom line to me, and I freely admit I'm Team AJ, as everyone jokes on the beat. I love the dude. He's honest. That's number one in my book. He's a great player. I've argued he's the best pure football player on the Eagles. I still believe that. And from that, my definition is nobody does their particular job at a higher level than A.J. Brown on the Philadelphia Eagles. That's my definition of it. They never lose when he's on the field, basically.
Yeah,
they lose a whole bunch when he's been off the field.
I know,
and they don't lose a lot. And typically, that's not. Typically, a wide receiver doesn't have that kind of impact on a team, but I think that speaks to how good he is. And even when he's not. And he is blocking, and people make fun of that aspect when you're talking about receivers. But I think everyone knows AJ's a good receiver. And I'll tell you what, if you look at the Super Bowl, while people say, yeah, this is run first, this is run person. It worked. Well, it didn't work in the Super Bowl. Kansas City sold out to stop Saquon Barkley. They basically did. And there were the go routes to AJ, and to a certain extent, Jahan Dotson.
And it worked though. So
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So you want to have both of those things in the equation to be the team, because people are going to look at that tape and you'll say, well, the Eagles blew them out. Yeah, but when it comes to stopping Saquon Barkley, people are going to look at that tape, say, what did Kansas City do?
Right.
And if you don't have AJ on the outside to counteract it, it's probably not a blowout.
I agree. I wouldn't even consider it, but I understand. I understand that that's this time of the offseason, no doubt. I get it. And we'll see what ends up happening. We're going to have Brandon Lee Gatwin in about 13 minutes here on Birds 365. So we'll talk to him coming up in a little bit. Before we do that, I do want to get to our first commercial break, but I do want to tell you guys about BetUS one more time. March Madness right around the corner, everybody. BetUS, go and check them out. You can see the promo code I put on your screen. I've been telling you it all year long. YouTube 150, it gives you 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. You get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000 to deposit less and bet with more. Go and take those Eagles futures. Go and take the Saquon Barkley futures. Go and take it all. And March Madness right around the corner, so looking forward to that. I haven't watched much college basketball yet this year. I've been very busy with the Eagles, but I'd like to try and catch up a little bit before March Madness kicks off. I know my Alabama Crimson Tide is looking pretty good, so that's pretty good stuff there. But go and check them out at betus.com and use that promo code, and a big thanks to them for sponsoring the show today. We'll be right back on Birds 365 in 3 minutes, 3 minutes from now.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Ignite your nights with free live entertainment daily, only at Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia's Center Bar. 7 days a week, enjoy some of the region's top party bands, performers, and DJs as they take the stage in the heart of the casino action. Great cocktails, live music, and lively moments. It's all happening at Center Bar at Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia. Visit livecasinophilly.com for more details and the complete list of upcoming events. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Your financial future is on the line. Are you ready for what's next? At Leone & Company Wealth Management, we help young professionals, business owners, and pre-retirees navigate the complexities of building and protecting wealth. For young professionals, we'll help you grow your wealth, plan for your future, and make the most of your hard-earned dollars. For business owners, we provide strategies to protect your company, manage risks, and create a lasting legacy for both your business and personal wealth. For pre-retirees, we'll design a plan to secure your retirement, ensuring you can live comfortably and confidently in your next chapter. Whether you're just starting out, managing a thriving business, or preparing for retirement, we're here to help you take control of your financial future. The first consultation is on us. Get the advice you need without the cost. Let's make your financial vision a reality. Take the next step. Scan the QR code to schedule your free consultation today. And of course, go Birds.
In our hometown, we all look out for each other. We step up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong as the #1 health insurer in the region. No IBX is always looking out for you.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. Give me a follow on X at @RealZander and at Zander Krause Show on Instagram. That's my co-host, John McMullen, Johnny Mac, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Give him a follow at JF McMullen, a great follow on X. John, I got a question on defense for you, really specifically on Darius Slay, as his time is wrapped up for now in Philly. We'll see if he makes a return. I think it all depends on what happens in free agency and what goes on in the next week, but we will see how it unfolds. Do you have Darius Slay as an Eagles Hall of Famer at this point? Didn't have the longest career here, but boy, it looked pretty good in his time here. How would you evaluate that?
Yeah, I mean, he was here for 5 years. They made 2 Super Bowls. They won a Super Bowl. He made 3 Pro Bowls. His last year might have been his best year. Probably could have made the Pro. Slam dunk.
Really, 5 years. I think so too. But I did hear
3-year team cap. This is not a team. This is not a team that has had good corner. It's amazing how quickly people do get spoiled. I talk about that with the offensive line. Just in general, the Eagles have had, this is the best era of Eagles football by far. They got great players all over the place. It's funny. I saw a clip online, and it was basically asking fans, and I wish I could give them credit, but I forget who put it up, asking fans of each team who they wanted out. And, Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, I don't know why I'm going AFC West, every team, not just the Eagles. The Eagles fan popped up, and he said, Darius Slay. And I'm like, boy, how spoiled is this fan base? That's the guy you want to get rid of? Right. Now, other people would say Avonte Maddox and be more sensible or whatever, guys. Or James. I'm like, boy, I don't get it. I don't get why people don't realize what type of player he was here and may continue to be, because it's not over yet. And then, off the field, which I get people don't get to see, but, 3-time team captain, would be 4-time if he comes back. He's an Eagles Hall of Famer.
Good stuff there, Darius Slay. Good time here in Philly. I think they're gonna. I think it does depend on what they end up doing. Like if they get Bond back and they make a move at an edge rusher or something like that, I don't think they're going to sign Slay. But if they, for whatever reason, lose all these guys, I think that's where they're going to probably go back to Darius Slay and bring him back for a year. But we'll see what ends up happening there. I agree with you. I do think he's an Eagles Hall of Famer. The hardware obviously comes into it. 2 Super Bowl appearances. And the #1 cornerback on all of those teams.
And basically one #1 defense, one where they were 12 yards away from being the #1.
Yeah, it's so true. That's so true.
That very successful era, and he was the best cornerback throughout it. Best outside corner, including last year.
He's the best Eagles cornerback since when? Like Lito Shepherd and those guys, maybe?
You have to go back to Troy Vincent.
Lito, you got Asante. Yeah, Troy Vincent. That's probably the closest one. He
was, I guess, you can argue with
what, 90s, late 90s, Troy Vincent?
Yeah, you could probably argue Asante was, but Slay's better. Slay career-wise, definitely. This is a borderline Hall of Fame player, Darius Slay.
Right.
So is Asante, though. So you can go back to Asante.
Yeah. Lito, Sheldon. That was the last time that there was at least 2 good corners. I think Slay was better than those guys, but that was the last time that there was 2 really good corners. Asante Samuel, we talked about him, and then Slay. Yeah, it's pretty good, man. Pretty impressive stuff for Darius Slay. So good list of corners, and not the greatest in the last 10 years, but he certainly changed that with an excellent play here in Philadelphia. And Johnny Mac has him in the Eagles Hall of Fame. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, this defense is going to be interesting, man, to talk about all off season and really as it unfolds in the next couple of weeks. But We had the number one defense in the NFL, and we did it we just talked about the contracts with Mike Gill. I mean, Jalen Carter, rookie deal. Nolan Smith, rookie deal. Jordan Davis, rookie deal. Moro Ajomo, rookie deal. Milton Williams, rookie deal. Cooper and Quinion, obviously rookie deals. Nakobe Dean on a rookie deal. Reed Blankenship on a small baby peanuts deal as an undrafted free agent. I mean, pretty crazy what they were able to do. But now it's time to turn the page, and you look at how do we rebuild that number one defense. It's a little harder to do. You're looking at Bowen, Sweat, Milton, Rogers, Burks, Dean, all things I think that have to be answered. So it's going to be a fun talking point all offseason, but I'm curious to see how he attacks it and how much input I think Vic might have on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, and they're going to have to start paying people at some point.
Yeah, which is that's when I think it'll change. Yeah.
Carter is going to set the market for defensive tackles. Cooper, wherever he's playing, they're going to have to pay him to Quinion. Now you got a couple years there. Nakobe Dean's coming up. He's eligible for an extension. What do you do there? We talked about Zach Ball. You had him for $3.5 million. You ain't going to have him for $3.5 million this year.
Right.
CJ, a lot of people brought up CJ. Is this a bad precedent, what they did with Saquon Barkley? Is CJ going to knock on the door and say, hey?
Well, look, I love CJ Gardner-Johnson. Hey, CJ, you had a good year.
I'm with you. I mean, but it's an interesting point because,
right,
players don't look at it that way. You and I look at it that way and say, settle down. It's Saquon Barkley. But players will look at it in a different way and say, well, I was a big part of this too. Why aren't you coming to me early?
Right.
There's always unintended consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, that's going to be a part of it no matter what. I don't think Howie will respond to everybody,
Reed Blankenship, I know, do you want to draft a safety? I know people don't believe in him because he's undrafted. I don't necessarily think that's the Eagles' case. That's what they believe, but the hit rate, Mike was just talking about it. It's ridiculous.
It is.
Draft. It almost to the point where, the odds come into it and say, you can't continue at that level. And you could say, well, we do this better. Come on. You don't have to go back too far to find the Ragers and the Dillards it generally doesn't happen. And even people were calling Jordan Davis a bust, and because he doesn't play a lot. People were calling Nolan Smith a bust because he didn't play enough early enough. People were calling, they say Ringo can't play because he hasn't played. He's a young player. Well, Mitchell played. He's a first-round pick too. Kaylee's a fourth-round pick.
Right. It's funny because I think if Keely Ringo stayed another year in college, he probably
would have been a first.
I mean, he was so. I don't think people remember how good he was at Georgia. He was a fucking beast at Georgia. Like he was.
Well, everybody's a beast at Georgia. Well, they all were beasts.
Well, I know, but I mean, individual. If you look at his individual tape, I mean, he was a tough dude to get past, man. I mean, Alabama didn't throw at it. Nobody threw at it. He was a good ass player. So I think it's in him. I think he can get to that level. Obviously,
who was also a beast at Georgia? Lewis Seen.
Yeah, he was.
Who's now on the Eagles, by the way.
You think there's any role for him in the future? I saw somebody mention him in the comments yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, he's here. Who knows? Maybe he can turn it around. But he was good at Georgia. All those guys were good at Georgia. And they continue to be. They're going to have a bunch more picks this year. But, yeah, I mean, not everybody's going to hit. And the Eagles have been on this crazy run of getting people. And I think their hope is people will look. But that's just not the nature of fans or even media.
Right.
Oh, sometimes everybody doesn't advance at the same level. And just because the 32nd pick in the draft, if you even pick 32nd, isn't a starter day one, whether it's the microwave culture in general, whether it's people's pain. I don't know what it is, but boy, people were a lot of people were out on. We talk about Brandon Graham all the time. A lot of people were out on Brandon Graham.
Is he done for sure? Do we know yet? Nothing on him yet?
No, nothing. I imagine that he's going to retire and they're going to do the whole thing they did for Jason and Fletcher Cox and get everybody down there and celebrate it, but nothing official.
Speaking of Brandon Graham, I'm seeing a report here. I don't know if it's confirmed, but Derek Gunn, while on 97.5 The Fanatic, he just said while appearing on Kincaid and Salachunas, D Gunn reports that Brandon Graham retore his triceps in Super Bowl LIX. I don't know if that's. I mean,
D Gunn's really close to
BG.
BG. So I if he said that, I haven't seen it. I'm sure it's true, but I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to if he said that. Yeah, it's probably true. I mean, he shouldn't have been playing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about that on this show right here,
yeah.
John.
He talked about it. He said it was a concern. It was the doctors alerted to him that was a possibility. But if D Gunn said it, it's true. He's very close to BG.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with BG and the rest of the defense here as the offseason unfolds. We got Brandon Lee Goutman coming up now here on Birds 365 from Bleeding Green Nation. Joined now by BLJ, Brandon Lee Goutman. Go and give him a follow on X at Brandon Goutman. Read all his work at Bleeding Green Nation. BLJ, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
Doing good, guys. How's it going?
Good, BLG. Did you hear that? I didn't hear that. Evidently, D Gunn was on somewhere. Where was he, Zander?
97.5. He was on the morning show there.
Brandon Graham retore his triceps in the Super Bowl. Did you hear that?
I had not until then, but I guess, I mean, I would think that would make sense given the risk of playing where he was at with his injury, and just kind of adds to his legacy, I suppose.
Yeah. Tremendous legacy, by the way. We were talking about sort of I think this rookie season by Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean specifically is going to skew people's perceptions of rookie players and how quickly they get up to speed and how long it took Brandon Graham to get to becoming Brandon Graham. And even Nolan Smith, there were a lot of people said Nolan Smith, what a waste of a pick at number 30. Sometimes it takes guys a little bit to get their feet under them. But when it comes to young players and performing, can we count on that another year? Or is it like, and we're going to get to Saquon, but to date, it's been like, all right, we're going to pay the offense and we're not going to pay the defense. Eventually, that's got to change, and it will change with Jalen Carter. But they're on this incredible run, BLG, with young players. Can that continue?
I mean, from a standpoint of, I think, they've clearly found some things that have worked for them. I think in the draft decision-making process, it sounds kind of obvious, but basically their formula generally has been like a good mix of production, athleticism, and, like making these good bets, basically, and in character as well. And, that serves you well, but obviously there's a big element of it's just luck at some level, because you guys need to stay healthy. Guys need to have the right temperament and everything. So, part of it is that I think that, they've done so well. There could be some regression naturally. But part of it too, I think, is that they also clearly invest in their player development. As we know, Connor Barwin does a good job with that group, among others, Matt Leo in there as well. And, so I think they have the resources in place to continue to draft and develop, these young guys. But obviously, I just think the hit rate has been so good, it might take a step back.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. BLG, what's your thoughts on that Saquon extension, man? Came early, and it's a big number, but obviously rewarding him for his massive season and projecting that he's going to continue to be a big part of this offense moving forward. Your reaction, your thoughts to that big contract?
Yeah, and this is a big part of the team overall is like leadership level. I think that's something we're seeing more and more of as the course of the season went along. Certainly going to expect him to be a team captain next year and moving forward. And I think it's really kind of reminds me of the A.J. Brown contract extension last year, in that, like, it's just you have to take care of your own. And I think Howie Roseman's very cognizant of that. And especially if they're going to go out and make a big move or two, let's say, just for example, Myles Garrett, I feel like it'd be weird to do that. But yet, Saquon has like literally the best, as Howie said it, he had the best season of any skill position ever, certainly the best running back season ever. And typically, you're not going to do this 1 year into a player's contract, but this was no typical situation. This is a very special situation, coming off the Super Bowl win, coming off this historic season. It is funny because part of the appeal of signing Saquon last year was obviously the value of his contract relative to, other receivers like making that kind of money. But ultimately, the Eagles got their value last year, and now they're paying him like he deserves to be paid, the top of the market guy.
I am a little bit surprised, and this goes far beyond Saquon, but do you get frustrated? You've been doing this a long time. Do you get frustrated at all when people overreact to the agent-driven numbers that come out first before the contract is actually filed? Because I guarantee you, BLG, and I haven't seen it, and I won't see it for a while. I guarantee you the Eagles got some cap relief early on with this extension. That's a pretty good bet. But have you gotten a lot of people saying, wow, how could you do this? Why would you do this? This is what the Eagles do. They're proactive. They did this 15 months earlier than most people would even think about it. And I think that's the secret to their success, believing in their evaluation, believing in setting the market, because ultimately this is where they're comfortable going with this player for the next 2 years. And that's just good business.
Yeah, it's risk, but it's, a risk obviously they feel comfortable taking with, and it's risk that has reward to it. Obviously, you can look at the other side of the coin, and you could do what the Cowboys do and wait to pay players. Yeah. And if they stink, then okay, you didn't pay them. Great, you can just walk, and then you're good. That's the upside of that strategy. Obviously, the massive downside is that you're paying more if you are waiting. And the Eagles have obviously found a nice system here where they're going to beat the market. They're going to set the market. They're not going to chase the market. And I think that's worked well for them. And I think this is also, as I said, like a culture kind of move as well. And also, like, if you're good, even if it's, let's say, like, not the best strategy to pay for past performance. I mean, again, this is a very, like, exceptional kind of case where the player did something. It's not like, oh, the player had a good season. It's like, no, he had literally one of the best NFL seasons.
Yeah, he made NFL history.
So ever, coming off a Super Bowl win. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't even think, now, I think there's a reward aspect to it, but I don't even think they're paying for past performance. I think they're saying, all right, this is our guy for the next 2 years. And they expect to be at the same high level. Maybe not literally, breaking his own record, but at a high level where he's got this huge impact on the offense. I don't think it's about paying for past performance. I think they're making the evaluation. They're saying he's got plenty left. We're going to manage him through the week, they always say, and we're going to ride this guy and we're going to win another Super Bowl. I think that's the reason they're paying him. Not rewarding him, although that's a part of it. And there's a bunch of stuff. I also think this is a signal to the rest of the league 1 week in front of free agency, like, hey, you probably want to do business with the Eagles because they're going to, if you perform, they're going to take care of you.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately, again, it's a move that, like, you can't regret rewarding such a special performance from such a special player. And also, I think from what I've seen from some of the cap experts out there that I trust, seems to be a lot more of kind of just assurance and like guarantee for Saquon and really just kind of, creating more security for him as well within the structure of that deal. Obviously, we'll see the exact numbers. We don't know the specifics yet. And that's always a frustrating thing to me is that, we get these reports. You asked John, like the frustrating part is that, like, we're just left in the dark for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And people take him as gospel. And then the contract, because I have got, I don't know if you have BLG, but I've gotten a lot of people to say, why, this is a dumb move. I'm like, trust me, there will be parts of this that are very good for the Philadelphia Eagles, as well as the player. And that's the win-win you're trying to get.
BLG, is this in your eyes? Is this a showing of a change in philosophy? I've been listening to John McMullen for 5 years here on JAKIB. I've been reading your work for years and years and years, covering this football team. This team has always wanted a passing offense. The owner, the GM, everybody, they love passing the football. At least that's what I've read. That's what I've been told. That's what's been reported for many years. And in many cases, that's what they've said. They just paid a running back massive money, reset the market at a running back coming off a historic season. Is this kind of a showing that, hey, we're not only going to have this, but we're going to embrace it and kind of make that more of our identity? That's how I read this, but how do you see that?
I think ultimately, Jeffrey Lurie likes passing the football, or when he's talked about it, because he believes that's what is the most conducive to winning. And ultimately, I think he cares about winning. If they have to do it a different way, I think part of what Jeffrey Lurie values as well is being on the cutting edge and being at the forefront and innovation. And, perhaps we're just in a time here in the NFL where things are resetting a little bit of a correction to things being so pass heavy that now there's a market inefficiency, if you will, with the running game a little bit. And, I still think like next year, I think they're going to probably aim to pass the ball more than they did this season. I don't think you can quite ride Saquon to the same extent that you did another season in a row. So, I still think that is very important to them, but obviously there's exceptions to every rule. And I think Saquon Barkley is an exceptional player who kind of gives you that exception.
Major trade, by the way, coming down. The Chicago Bears are trading for Chiefs Pro Bowl offensive lineman Joe Thuney. I always joke about nobody copies the right things. Everybody says the NFL is a copycat league, but nobody copies what the Eagles do. And number one on the field, offensive line. All of a sudden, the Chicago Bears have figured that out, and they're trading for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson. Good, bad? What do you feel about that? Because I look at this Eagles team, and we talk about splash players, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley. I still say the MVP of this team is that sticking offensive line. Mm-hmm. And now, if other teams figure that out, maybe they can close the gap.
They can try. Obviously, got to nail the evaluations, and having Jeff Stoutland is clearly a big part of it as well.
That part helps. Yeah.
So, I do think, like you said, copycat league teams. It's not like the Eagles are, have this formula that no one else can try to recreate. But I think always easier said than done. Just like we've seen, for example, in a different kind of way with Vic Fangio. Like everyone has tried to create the Vic Fangio formula, but having the real deal thing is a lot different.
Yeah, Joe Thuney is 32 years old. I mean, I like to trade for them because they got to get the offensive line better, but it's 32-year-old guy. I don't know.
All of a sudden, but I don't get caught up in that because the NFL shows short term. I think everybody gets caught up in the next 10 years. To me, it's about the next 2-3 years.
Right, that makes sense. That's fine.
And then you reset it. But all of a sudden, if Caleb Williamson, I don't know, you have Ben Johnson. I don't know. I've always made fun of Chicago. People that listen to the show know that. But all of a sudden, if you have a great young quarterback with an offensive line, that tends to pique my interest. And I don't know if Caleb Williams will turn into that, but he should be better with Ben Johnson. Just an interesting trade I wanted to mention. But to get it back to the Eagles, Joe Burrow said, you probably saw it during the offseason, the Eagles pay everybody as we get towards free agency, BLG. And they don't really pay everybody. And, we're going to see that, I think, on the defensive side. Priority Zach Bond. I think they'll get him back. We'll see. I don't think Milton Williams and Josh Sweat are coming back. It seems like the Eagles are paying their offensive players, and Vic will figure it out on defense. I probably said that to you before. It certainly worked last year. Mm-hmm. At some point, they're going to have to pay the Jalen Carters and the Quinyon Mitchells and the Cooper DeJeans, but they got some time. The defense was better than the offense. Yep. Should we be paying more attention to the defense and guys like Milton Williams and Josh Sweat?
I mean, they were definitely better than the offense. They were unreal.
Yeah.
And Zach Vaughn, as you know, you mentioned, I think, I still think that's going to happen. So, I mean, yeah, I think I have a hard time believing they're going to be like a defense first team, but I think with where they're at, again, I think it's not always just about the overall philosophy. It's about looking at the reality of your situation and who it's worth investing in. And I think they have a lot of players worth investing in. Obviously, I don't think Josh Sweat and Milton Williams will be in that category. I think those guys are good players who deserve the money they'll get from other teams. But in terms of what this team is able to do with their limited resources, I don't think those are the investments that are really going to be the best ones in terms of what the Eagles could do with that money elsewhere.
Another change happened this week, BLG. The Eagles moved on from Darius Slay. I think it was the right move, but I think there's a chance he could come back, and I would welcome that depending on how the other moves with the defense shape out with Vaughn and Williams and Sweat and all those guys. But how do you see Darius Slay? I asked John the question, is he an Eagles Hall of Famer in your eyes? Only 5 years in Philly, but a damn good 5 years. How do you see the Slay scenario? You think he should come back, or you think it's time to turn the page and go Ringo, Ricks, and maybe bring back Rodgers?
Yeah, I really think it's time to turn the page. And like I think it's about making good bets. And I think Darius Slay could be a good player again in 2025. But you're betting on an age 34 corner when that position is very much a young man's game. You don't see a lot of other aging corners in the NFL, period. And then of the ones who are having success, it's like Stephon Gilmore. Like that's really it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. That's
so I just don't think that's a good bet. And you're in a unique situation. This isn't like linebacker, where if you don't have Zach Vaughn, what do you have? It's like if you don't have Darius Slay, you have Quinton Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. I think the Eagles, should keep at least one of Rodgers or Slay. We'll see if they're able to do that. I would like to keep Rodgers. I think you can spin that forward. And then obviously Keely Ringo is still in the mix here too. And yeah, as you mentioned, Zander, Eli Ricks, not that you're counting on him as a major piece, but like he's another guy in that room who's a young player. He's only 23 that like you have to save somewhere. And I just don't see the need to spend money, again, making good bets on an aging player who, again, nothing against Darius Slay for all he's accomplished. And again, might be able to have one more good year, but you have to save somewhere. And I think that's a spot you feel more comfortable saving and saying, okay, we'll go a little bit, less proven here than other options.
If Slay is gone for good this time, where are you with his legacy? I think he's underrated. If you look at this, before he got here, the struggles they had at cornerback, the 5 years, 2 Super Bowls, 1 Super Bowl championship, 3 Pro Bowls, 3-time team captain, off the field stuff. If anything, I feel he's underrated by Eagles fans. Do you get that feeling?
I think he definitely had an interesting arc in terms of he comes in 2020, and I thought he really did not play well that year. Struggled from the jump, certainly at least not to the standard he showed in the years after that, where he played a lot better. And certainly and it evolved in a way that I think unexpected too. I don't think any of us would have said at the time, like, even though he was a good player at his peak in Detroit, that we would envision him being a team captain in Philadelphia. Like, that really wasn't like a foregone conclusion. So I really think it's interesting how he evolved as both a leader and a player over the course of his time here. And, obviously the mentorship he provided for the young players. I think you saw the value of that, especially this year with Cooper DeJean and Quinton Mitchell talking about how much Slay matters to them. I think he just really, not to say he's like the comic relief character, but he kind of is in the standpoint of, I think he adds levity to the team, which is important because, football, it's a very serious and macho sport and everything. But sometimes you need to remember to like have fun and not take things too seriously, enjoy yourselves. Nick Sirianni, big on the talking point of joy. And I think Darius Slay contributed to that.
I always talk about Howie, PLG, and one of the great things about Howie is it's his contingencies. It's when the plan A doesn't work out. He's ready to pivot and gets it. You saw that last year with Mekhi Becton right after the draft, and they didn't get one of those guard tackle hybrids that they thought they might get. All of a sudden, here's Mekhi Becton showing up, and he has the year that he had. You remember who they were trying to sign the year they traded for Slay in free agency? top of the market guy. They had to be Byron Jones.
Yeah. Yep.
And all of a sudden they couldn't get him because Miami outpriced him. And they shifted gears and they traded for Darius Slay. I don't know where Byron Jones is now, but there's an example of the contingencies, and that, plan A is always not going to work out, and you got to be ready to shift right away. And so many times moves like that have worked out for the Eagles. I think that's where Howie Roseman sets himself apart, is those contingencies.
I think Eagles history, really, just even dating back to 2016, like, it's interesting. There's been some very big time inflection points in terms of they could have hired Ben McAdoo instead of Doug Peterson. They wanted to do that. The most recent Super Bowl season, 2 years ago, they wanted Allen Robinson. They probably, I think they had some level of interest in Christian Kirk,
and Christian Kirk, Robert Woods as well.
Robert Woods. They could have done something where, AJ Brown doesn't happen. So I'm not trying to take credit away from them, because obviously you have to keep your options open, and they ultimately made the right moves, but sometimes they're closer to making the bad moves than it seems.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's everybody. I think it's a positive for Howie, because Byron Jones, I mean, he was a good player. He was all pro. He really was top of the market. Bunch of teams, obviously Miami paid him a ton of money at the time. It made sense that was the guy you wanted, but I'm always impressed by how quickly he's able to pivot, because I think other teams, not everybody, but a lot of other teams, when their plan goes awry, they have very difficult time getting their footing and going in a different direction. I think that's an underrated aspect of Howie's success and his ability to do those types of things. But he gets too much credit. I'm gonna play devil's advocate and say this about the Eagles heading into free agency, and that's he's called it sort of a maintenance offseason. Is that a smokescreen, or are we going to see some kind of splashy move? Because Myles Garrett is out there. I don't know if you've seen this New England stuff with AJ Brown. It's kind of weird. It just keeps bubbling up there. Is there going to be something we don't expect with a big name player?
I mean, I think you're kind of looking at maybe one, big kind of splash move in terms of external. If you want to say two and count Zach Bond, yeah, okay, fine. I really think it's those are kind of going to be the pillars of the offseason in terms of you re-sign Zach Bond. That's when you're big, internal retaining that guy, and then maybe you have one kind of splashy addition, probably more likely trade. So you'd say Myles Garrett, whoever would fit the bill there. And I think that's going to be the pillars of it. Everything else, smaller moves. They're going to sign some players who were cut in terms of not having to impact the compensatory pick formula. They could sign some guys once June rolls around and that next wave of free agency begins again, where also the comp pick formula isn't being impacted at that point. So yeah, not the sexiest kind of offseason, I think, for the Eagles ahead. Certainly not to the level of last year. I think it'll be a little bit more of what we saw, after the last time they went to the Super Bowl and lost, where obviously they lost more players, I think, than they will be here in that scenario. They didn't really do a whole lot in terms of big time additions that offseason.
Bill J, we're looking ahead to the NFL draft. What are you seeing in round one for the Eagles? Or are you seeing them package that pick and going for a guy like Myles Garrett? You just said you don't think it's going to be a sexy offseason. Well, if they trade for Myles Garrett, that's going to be pretty sexy. We'll see what they end up doing. But your thoughts on that 32 overall pick and what they're going to end up doing with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just a really good chance that one of their biggest positions of need, either we could say edge rusher or defensive tackle, probably more so even, again, depending what happens with Myles Garrett or anything. I tend to think that they and we'll see, if they trade down like they did last time, they're on the board at 32. But I tend to think that defensive tackle offensive line, or if not, if they like someone in the trenches. I know Tony Pauline put out there. They like that North Dakota State. Going back to that,
Ray Zabel,
yes, a guy who might be able to like play guard earlier in his career, and then eventually shift out to tackle, maybe to replace Lane Johnson down the road if necessary. I think in the trenches. I think totally going to load up in the trenches either way with that pick.
It's worked for him. Howie, I always go back to the Cam Jurgens draft when everybody was mad at him for taking Cam Jurgens because it didn't make, Jason Kelsey, he's still playing, he's still an all-pro. And they're like, and Howie's like, that's how we roll. If it's even, they're going to go offensive, defensive line. And I think it served them well over the years, which circles back to paying all the skill position talent on the offensive side of the ball. But that's only when they have the offensive line in place. And I think Ray Zabel's an interesting name you bring up, BLG, because if he's there at 32 and they can't trade out and you got to take somebody, they're probably going to default to somebody like that. And I guarantee people will be upset by that. Even though they have every skill position player. There are too many skill position players, arguably, because they can't get the football to Jahan Dotson and the third receiver and all that kind of stuff. Coaching staff. I don't know how much we've got into the coaching staff with you. They've made the moves. Kevin Patullo, I know we talked about. I thought it was an interesting hire at quarterback coach, though. I thought, being so late, and obviously it's more limited, I thought they might look at the college ranks. They did. They bring in Scott Leffler, the former Bowling Green head coach. I like it. None of us know about assistant, let's be honest. But I think it checks a lot of boxes. He's coached the position for a quarter century. He's a leader by nature. If he's a head coach, I like it. What do you think of that hire?
It's so the precedent is interesting to me. Like how many college head coaches are leaving, not to like getting fired or whatever, the contract expiring, just actively being in that job and then leaving to become a position coach in the NFL, especially with like no kind of previous connection that's apparent to the head coach or the coaching staff at large. So just really interested that they were able to get Scott Loeffler ultimately. And seems like a guy, I think, who could fit in that quarterback room in terms of like Jalen Hurts, like having respect for that guy in terms of like he's worked with Tom Brady, has obviously worked with Tim Tebow's work. He's worked with these big names. I think there's a respect factor there that's probably valuable to have. Playing experience at a college level also certainly I think factors in as well. And I think a bigger part of it that, we talk about quarterbacks coach, he's working with Jalen Hurts, he's working with the backups as well, is the contributions to the scheme. And the fact that he's also has some play calling experience and offensive coordinator experience. And I think that's certainly relevant when you have a first-time play caller here this season coming up with Kevin Patullo. And I also think, the Eagles probably learning from how they handled the last offensive coordinator change and maybe kind of wanting to incorporate some new ideas. I think Scott Loeffler is able to kind of bring those. And I think it's not a coincidence. Like they also interviewed Nunzio Campanelli.
Nunzio, yeah. I was hoping
Syracuse.
Nunzio would get
I wanted
job.
him to get the job just because of his name.
Of course. But I think, like, again, the reason why they interviewed him as well is like, he was overseeing the top college passing offense last year. I think they're looking at these guys with different kind of ideas and trying to figure out how they can incorporate that into this offense.
It'll be interesting to see what they end up doing. I mean, I brought up earlier in the segment with you, they pay Saquon. I'm wondering if they're doubling down. It's not that I don't think they're going to try and improve the passing game, but I do wonder if they've embraced, and I like what you said, where they like to be cutting edge. And it seems like now the cutting edge is maybe getting back and taking advantage of some of these smaller defenses and running all over them. So we'll see what they end up doing. But it is an interesting setup with offense where everybody on offense is paid, BLJ. I mean, Jimmy Kempski put up a graph to like 2028 with the exception of Goddard and Becton. Everybody's here, and Jurgens, who's due for an extension. Everybody's here. And then defense, you got a lot of rookies playing on rookie contracts. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds here in this offseason. But good stuff today, BLJ. We appreciate you joining in on the show, my man. You do it every Wednesday for us, and we appreciate that very much. We'll talk to you next week. All right, brother? All right, there's BLG. I didn't
Yeah,
hear
at Brandon Gouton on X, and make sure you read him and his staff at bleedinggreennation.com.
Yeah, good stuff there from BLG. Cut out at the end there. I didn't hear his final word, but we appreciate him for checking in on the show. John, it is an interesting dynamic where this team is, in that I think the next couple of years can be the best, but you do look at the roster construction, and they don't really pay anybody on defense. And with Slay gone,
It's unbelievable.
they really don't pay anybody on defense. Like, who do they pay on defense right now? If you think,
well, it'll be Zach Bond. If they're
the only guy they pay is Bryce Puff.
Yeah. And they're going to have to, Jalen Carter's going to set the market, after next season. They're going to have to pay him. You got 2 years with Quignon and Cooper. In theory, if they continue to play at the level they're paying, it's going to change. But right now, it is unbelievable how many young players they've gotten production out of. It really is. I mean, look, I thought things were going to be bad when Bryce Huff and Brandon Graham got hurt. I did. I thought it was going to be a big freaking issue.
Yeah.
And here comes Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt. It's pretty unbelievable. Yeah, when Jeff Kerr was on the show on Monday, we were talking about that preseason game in Baltimore. If people film that game, or I don't even know if NFL Plus puts preseason games. I don't know. But if you get a chance to watch that game, it was ugly. And I'm like, they're going to play this guy at all-ball linebacker? It was ugly. And he's a first-team All-Pro.
That's amazing.
$3.5 million. Made plays from week 1 through the Super Bowl. And Zach Bond. Nakobe Dean. Yeah, there were people trashing me. I got those receipts as well.
Oh, yeah.
When I was telling them, yeah, look, he's better than Devin White. But even I didn't know he would play to the level he played. And when Nakobe went down, then I'm like, oh boy, you got to put Oren Burks in there?
Yeah, right. And they prevailed again.
Oren Burks was unbelievable in the playoffs. Unbelievable. Rookie corners. 2 rookie corners. That just doesn't happen. All over the place. Vic Fangio deserves credit. Jeremiah Washburn for getting those young edge rushers. Clint Hurts with the interior defensive lineman, the steps forward. Bobby King with the linebackers. Christian Parker in the secondary. And obviously Vic at the top of it. But boy, man, that defense, for the amount of money they spent on it. I mean, it's one thing anytime you have the number 1 defense and you go from where they were arguably the worst defense at the end of the 2023 season, and they go from arguably worst to first, that's amazing. But to do it without, usually when stuff like that doesn't happen, but usually when you have big improvements, you go out and sign a big time player.
Right.
Or no, they just hit on a bunch of young players or a bunch of under the radar players. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with everything, John, as it unfolds here in the offseason. We do have a super chat I want to get to. No Limit. Thank you for the super chat, brother. Appreciate everybody for being here today. Don't forget to hit that like button. The shows are getting good. They're always good, but boy, this is a fun time of the offseason as we are a week before free agency, how it all unfolds, and then the lead up to the NFL draft is obviously all very good. No Limit checks in, John. He says, wouldn't losing 3 defensive starters in Milton, Sweat, and Slay, then moving Coop outside, be too much of a change to overcome to be a top 3 defense? It certainly is a lot of change, but John, your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you could bring back this group as is and be a top 3 defense. I mean, that's just hard.
I know.
It's hard to do year after year after year, but
yeah, like it wouldn't be crazy to say Saquon Barkley is not going to have as good of a year next year.
No,
it's just like the odds are
if you're playing the odds,
yeah.
Right. I mean, that just is what it is. But it's not like they're not going to. I would say Look, I just talked up Nolan Smith and Jelix Hunt. There's no way, and I've said this earlier in the week, and I'll say it again. There's no way the Eagles are going into next season with those being their two top edge rushers. They are going to make moves. If they lose Milton Williams, which I expect them to, they might draft. We were talking about Walter Nolan with Devin Jackson yesterday. They might draft a defensive. They're going to bring in people. Are they going to play at the same level? That's a big question mark. You have to say, is Quinyon Mitchell able to back up that rookie season? Is Cooper DeJean able to back up that rookie season? Is Zach Bond going to be playing at the same level? Look, I'm the first one. I said the Eagles have to pay Zach Bond. I say that, and I also acknowledge it is very unlikely, same thing with Saquon Barkley, that he has the same season he had this year.
All right. And it won't really be a knock on the player. I mean,
No.
let's be real. Fred Warner wasn't the same guy he was this year versus last year. The question is, can he be a comparable player? Can he be that level of player?
Can he still be one of the best linebackers?
Right, exactly. That's what it is. Can he still be a top 5? Can he still make an impact on your defense?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're statistically going to match up the same or all pros or any of those things, but should be interesting to see, how all that plays out, man. It's a tough spot, but I think they're in a good spot. John, I'll ask you this because it makes me wonder about Myles Garrett, where you look at the roster, you look at the construction, and we just talked about it, how nobody on defense is getting paid, but everybody on offense is getting paid. I said the A.J. Brown talk was insane. Well, if you want to get Myles Garrett, that's a $40 million guy on defense. Like, eventually something's got to give there, and that's where I wonder, what does Howie want to make that move, or does Howie look at, if you can go in the draft and if you believe an edge that you like is going to fall to you at 32, or you're going to be able to go and grab one, does the value you would get from a contributing edge on a rookie contract mean more to the team as it's constructed right now than blowing up some things and going for a guy in Myles Garrett that you're going to have to pay crazy big bucks to? I'm not saying that the rookie would be close to the player, but would that value as a rookie edge rusher contributing be more important to this team the way it's set up than trading for a guy like Myles Garrett would? I think it's got to be at least a discussion.
Well, I think that's, where I would say that the most difficult thing for any NFL front office is to be honest with themselves. And, for a lot of teams, that would make a lot of sense. And for a different cycle for the Eagles, that would make a lot of sense. Right now, they're a Super Bowl team. They're a fucking Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
The window is open. I'm not worried about 4 years. I'm worried about 2025. I don't even know what year it is. 2026, and that's it. That's it. Can I get one more? Can I get 2 more? Can I be the first team to win 3 in a row?
Yeah, baby. I like it, Johnny Mac.
And that's Myles Garrett. Yeah, I don't give a shit about a young rookie edge rusher with this team. With the New York Giants, yeah, of course. With some rebuilding team, of course. I want the cost-effective guy. For this team, no. I'm going for it. And I think the Eagles understand they're in that position. Now, a lot of teams think they're in that position and aren't in that position. And that's where you make mistakes. I don't think anybody can look at the Philadelphia Eagles today, and even though we haven't hit free agency, and says, oh, this team's going to struggle next year. It's just a matter of how good they're going to be. They're good. And that's when you seize the moment, not back off and start talking about 2028.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. So that's how I kind of look at it.
Yeah. I just wonder with because of those offensive contracts, I don't know, if you do go for Garrett now, I get it. The 2-year window looks beautiful, but do you have to give up something to get that? Because the way you're built,
you definitely have to give up something.
I mean something like an A.J. Brown or a Devontae Smith or something like that. I'm not talking about,
For all the people that want to shit on everything that's going on in New England, it makes a lot of sense. I will say that. And I'm the biggest AJ guy in the world. Makes a lot of sense. You're run first anyway. You're going to have to start paying defensive players sooner rather than later. I think Jahan Dotson can play a little bit. It's not the craziest idea. I will say that. It's not the craziest idea.
Devontae Smith's contract is easier to move off from if you look at it on.
Well, that's the problem too, is that he's not tradable till basically after June 1st for McCall, and that doesn't.
If you trade someone today, can you designate it or no?
They can't. They already designated their two options, which is a surprise.
They kind of signaled they're not out on Garrett, but they're not going to trade one of those guys before June 1st.
Well, I haven't even looked at Garrett from a Cleveland perspective, but I know AJ, I just looked at it today because we were talking about it. If you trade him pre-June 1st,
you're not
31 and a half dead, and you lose 14 million of cap space. If you trade him post June 1st, it's 10.8, 10.7 of dead money, almost 7 million cap savings. So it makes much more sense post June 1st, but then you don't get the value to get the player. So it doesn't fit from a calendar perspective. And that's the problem. As far as Myles Garrett's contract,
it's not good. I'm looking at it right now. If you trade him today, dead cap's 36 million. You're losing 16.5.
Yeah. It's just
if you trade him between March 14th and June 1st, you're 41 million dead cap with losing 21.5 million. Now, if you go to post 6-1 trade, your dead cap's 14.7 and you're saving 5 million. So I guess it gets a little better after June 1.
Yeah. So nobody looks at these things when they make up these. It's like, all right, why would Cleveland do that? So ultimately, other than Myles Garrett completely making it known that I'm not going to play for this crappy organization, and which players can do that, and they've done that. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it doesn't make, and that's what Andrew Berry has said consistently. It doesn't make a lot of sense for Cleveland to trade him.
We'll see what ends up happening. Johnny Mac, great show today, brother. I thought Mike Gill and BLG were both awesome on the show today. We appreciate them for joining in here. I appreciate everybody checking in the chat. Curtis, Eagle Nest, Chuck Hutton, James Jones, Jason A-Team, Twiz the Jigga, and anybody I missed. I appreciate you for being here. Hit that like button for us. We appreciate that. It's one of the best things you can do to help us grow. Johnny Mac, your final thoughts on today's Wednesday edition, an Ash Wednesday edition of Birds 365.
Javon Hargrave it's going to be a post June 1st release. So Javon's going to be back on the market. We'll get that out. I'm not going to make any football 24/7 predictions. So stuff is coming hot and heavy now.
Yeah.
Joe Thuney trade. That's a big trade. Chicago all of a sudden making some good decisions. That surprises me. Who knows? You get a young quarterback with a good offensive line. Who knows? Difficult division though. Yeah, interesting. Barmore, I told everybody, and I'm glad that people are sticking around. We got a lot of live viewers again, so thank you for that, everyone. And I told you the stuff in the off season is more interesting than the regular season.
Yep, Johnny Mac loves it. John, great stuff today, brother. As always, great breakdown, great reaction to everything that happened yesterday, and you just said it. We'll see if we talk later on today, Johnny Mac. Good stuff, brother. I'll catch you later on, and if not later today, tomorrow on Birds 365. Right, brother?
All right. Thanks, all.
All right. There's John McMullen here on Birds 365. Great job from Johnny Mac. We'll have a very short, abbreviated Zander time today. I mentioned it's Ash Wednesday. Those of you who know, I am a proud Catholic, so I will be going and getting my ashes today for Ash Wednesday. So I got to run, but I did want to kick around. Just get your guys' thoughts on the Saquon Barkley extension, man. I think it's well-deserved. Obviously, and what a great player he's been for this city, for this team, for the leadership aspect, for what he's brought to the football field. But I think both on and off the field, I'm super excited that he's going to be back for another couple of years. And look, I think it's well-deserved. And I think one of the things that, not John, but, because I think John does acknowledge this stuff. But one of the things that maybe falls under the radar with moves like this is that the entire NFL world watches this stuff. Okay. Players care about contracts. Players care about guaranteed money. Players are loyal to their paycheck. All right. We're loyal to the Philadelphia Eagles. That's where our fandom lies. Players are loyal to the contract. Players are loyal to the money that they make, and they want to play for an organization that takes care of their players. And the perception of this organization around the league right now is sky high. Sky high. Every player dreams of getting drafted to an organization like the Birds. It's just the truth. I mean, you could be an Eagle hater. That's the truth. You think you wanted to be T. Higgins and get drafted to Cincinnati and you get franchise tagged twice? Or would you rather be Devontae Smith, only have 1 year over 1,000 yards, but the team values you and knows how good you are as a player, and they give you a massive bag before they even give you your pick up your fifth-year option? Look, this is a good organization, man. This is a good organization. Players around the league are watching the way we do business. They want to play here in Philly, and it's a good time to be a Philadelphia Eagle fan. Big credit to Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, the entire front office for what they've been able to do. And I will take a couple of comments on what you guys think about the Saquon Barkley move. James Jones. James, you're the Hall of Fame shit takes of the day. You're number one today, brother. You're number one today, Jammers. I hate to do it to you. You're number one on the shit take list of the day. All right. So you are our number one today. Absolutely brutal from you, calling A.J. Brown a fraud. I mean, what are you doing in the chat, James Jones? You're saying to us, you care about your team hasn't been relevant in 20 fucking years. It's Ash Wednesday. I shouldn't be cursing. I take it back. Dude, you're in the Super Bowl champions chat. Come on, man. Freaking James Jones. A tough day for you. James, maybe you'll bounce back and have a better day tomorrow. That's always a possibility. But today was brutal for you, Jammers. It was brutal for you. AJ's a fraud. Howie's got money coming up. The salary cap. Commanders are getting better. You got a fatty. You got fatty Debo. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? Come on, Jammers. Kevin Landon, what's up, Kevin? Great move on Saquon for the team, the player, and the fans. Kevin, great take. Agreed on all three fronts. Good for the team. Good for the camaraderie in the locker room. Good for players who look at players who contribute to this football team and get taken care of. Great for the player, to feel like he was rewarded for what he did. Remember, he made a sacrifice as well in terms of not going and getting the record in that Week 18 game. So. Great reward there, and for the fans as well. Obviously, what a player, what an impact he had on the city and this team. And I agree on all three fronts. Well done, Kevin Landon. I appreciate that take. Brian Fleming checks in with a super chat. What's up, Flem? You think Debo is giving up all the food he's eating for Lent? I don't know, Flem. Maybe he is. Or maybe he's going over and hanging out with James Jones. They're eating pancakes and waffles this morning. Come on, Jammers. We'll see. What am I giving up for Lent? That's a bigger question. I don't know yet. All right. I don't know yet. Probably just going to go no sweets, no chips, nothing. All real foods. That's it. That's probably what I'm doing. And I'll do a couple of things too. I more like to be proactive than like cut stuff out. I don't know. Maybe that's not a good way to look at it, but that's how I'm looking at it. All right. Maybe I can add a couple of things. Let me take a few more comments here on the Saquon contract. Bird Gang Girl, he deserves it. Can't wait for his jersey. I won here next season. Heck yeah, Bird Gang Girl. I love it. Appreciate you for being a member here on JAKIB Sports. We got to get Z a whiteboard for the shit list. I do have a whiteboard in my studio that I use, but it's not right here. I should put one on this wall, almost next to these hats, and you guys can see it. And I'll just start listing out the shitty takes of the day. John could be mid-talk, and I might just stop and just write down a name for a shit take I see during the show. Because, man, let me tell you, I see a lot of them. Where's Pumper? His takes have been brutal. The whiteboard. Well, maybe I will add that. All right. Maybe I will add that to the thing. King K, what's up, King K? Young players know you get paid with a winning organization. Well, King K, not all winning organizations. The Chiefs are a winning organization. They don't really pay everybody. They don't really pay everybody. Think about it, King K. They had L'Jarius Sneed, who played amazing, won a Super Bowl with them on a rookie contract. Bye. Tyreek Hill, goodbye. I mean, outside of Patrick Mahomes, like, who are they paying? I mean, Chris Jones and Pat Mahomes, those are the two guys. But everything else in Canada, they just traded Joe Dooney. So I get your point, but I think the Eagles have even separated themselves from winning organizations. They're better than that. They're better than that, but I do appreciate the point, King K. Good to see you in here, my man. Philly 444 checks in. Which side of the Garrett trade are you on today, Zander? I don't know, Philly. I haven't decided yet today, all right? I'm going back and forth on this thing left and right. I can't help it. I can't help it. Right now, I'm thinking, though, just gave more money on the offense. Are they positioned to give that type of money on the defensive side, or are they better positioned to draft somebody with a 32 overall pick, get value out of a rookie contract again, and try and keep this thing going? I know John says right now the window's 2 years. I get it, but I think you can be really good in 2 years for the next 2 years. I think you can be really good for the next 2 years without getting Myles Garrett. I don't think the only way to be really good is get Myles Garrett, especially, it all comes down to what it costs, I think, is the truth. I mean, if you're giving up A.J. Brown, I'm out. I'm sorry. I think we can prevail better than trading A.J. Brown for Myles Garrett. I just do. I feel the same about Nolan Smith. I feel the same about Devontae Smith. I feel the same about Cooper DeJean. All these young guys that we've talked about. I'm sorry. I'm just not in on it. If you're telling me give up 32, a 3, and a 3 in next year's draft, all right. That I can manage. Chuck Hutton. Chuck says, do not mortgage the future for Miles G. Chuck, I love the player, but I will say, mortgaging the future for a 30-year-old guy, like, isn't that kind of what, like, the bad organizations do? Where they go into desperation mode and they make a move like that because it's so sexy on the surface and they think it's going to be the end-all be-all and it's super team and it's going to work out. Like, I think one of the reasons this Eagles team works right now is because they're the right players. Back to my Herb Brooks. I'm not looking for the best players, Craig. I'm looking for the right ones. Is that the right move? He's the best player, yes. Is it the right move for this team, for this city, for this locker room at this point in time? I'm not sold yet that it is. I'm just not. I'm not sold yet that it is. We'll see. I wouldn't call it a panic move. But I would say it's a gamble. I mean, I would say it's one of those big moves that you're making. And again, I don't know. Philly 444, where's the Kelly Green Kango with this gray crap? Oh, you don't like the gray? I like the gray. Get the blue logo, matches the blue top. Come on. 444. I might read some football takes from you, but I will not take advice on Kango wearing from you, 444. Come on. I appreciate you, though. Kelly Green's right back there. You can probably see it. See it on top. And then I got another one on the wall. I got 2 Kelly Greens. 2 Kelly Greens for the Kangos. 2 Kelly Green Kangos. All right. And yes, the spring Kango release just came out. So, yeah, what happened? I had to go on and make an order. All right. The black and gold is fire, Fleming. I'm happy you noticed that sucker because that thing was sweet. I love the black and gold. Eagle Nest checking in. What's up, Eagle Nest? You've had a day where you were on the list of good takes. You've had a day where you were on the list of shit takes. Where will you fall today? Let's see. The window is 3 years. It'll be longer if we win the next 3 drafts. It's only 3 years if we don't take draft picks and don't hit the next 3 years. I'll put you on the good list today. I think that's a great take. You get Myles Garrett, that window might be 2 years. If you draft a great edge rusher, now you're talking about a long window here. I mean, the offense locked up till 2028, basically. You make the right draft pick with an edge rusher. I think that extends your window for sure. But, look, some people will say, what's better, a window of 5 years or being exceptional for 2? I don't know. I get it. And there's a lot of things that have to go right for you to win a Super Bowl, but I don't know. I really am going back and forth on this Myles Garrett thing because, like I told you guys on Cilio show, for those who listened to my segment on Cilio yesterday, man, I wake up, I can smell the coffee brewing, and then I immediately imagine how good would Myles Garrett be with Jalen Carter. It's hard to dismiss that. It's hard to dismiss that. I understand, but holy moly. I do wonder what the best move is for this team. And you know what? The truth is, I'm confident that Howie's going to have a better pulse, his finger on the pulse of that. All right. I think Howie is going to make the right. One sec. Let me fix this because this thing's about to go down. I don't want an issue here. All right. All good. All good. Eagle Nest checking in again. Zander, I'm saying we get Garrett and draft well. That'll lead to our window being open longer than 3 years. With Garrett and no drafting, it's 3 years. Well, Eagle Nest, if you get Garrett, you're not taking first rounders, presumably for the next 2 years. So now you're talking about you have to hit on draft picks 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round. I don't know. Why isn't that sign hung up yet? You slacking, Zander. Twiz, you're right. You know what? I was going to try and do some stuff yesterday in here, but big news came down. I started working. I had shorts to make. I had all sorts of stuff to do in the show yesterday. All right. Gray sweatpants season. It's always gray sweatpants season when I'm working. I got all different colors, Flem. Could you see them when I stood up? I guess that's what happened. Yo, Twiz, don't tell me I'm slacking. All right, Twiz. Twiz, worry about your own game. Plenty there to keep you busy. Twiz. All right, I got to run, everybody. I got to get ready for church. Yes, church. Going to get my ashes. Little Ash Wednesday action. Hopefully I get a good cross that shows well on the show this afternoon. All right? I'm going to church. So I got to get out of here pretty soon. I'm going to get this podcast posted up. I appreciate all of you guys for checking in here today. Some of the best viewers in the world right here on JAKIB Sports. I appreciate all of you guys for everything you do, everything you all the comments, the listening, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, you name it, the super chats. It all means a lot to me. So I appreciate all of you guys for checking in today. A pretty good show today. Congrats to Saquon Barkley on his historic contract. Well-deserved. Well-deserved, my friend. Well-deserved for Saquon Barkley. And a big shout-out to all of Eagle Nation. I think it's a good contract for them. I thought Kevin Landon said it beautifully. All right? This is a good contract for the city, for the team, for the player, for the whole organization. I know everybody says or debates whether it's good or not. It is. All right. This is the reality. This guy came in here, and whether you want to believe it or not, the Eagles were front page news every single week this year. And a big part of that reason is because of Saquon Barkley and what he was able to do for this team. So it's awesome to get the recognition, to have a guy like that wearing Eagle green uniform. Those are the type of players that go down in history, that live in immortality in Eagle land. And to reward that player, in my opinion, will always be the right move. And you can make everybody else adjust around it. Those are your centerpieces. Those are the guys that you want to take care of. And the Eagles, to their credit, have done it. All right. So appreciate all you guys checking in. David LaPrade says, didn't realize it was Ash Wednesday. Well, this is my public service announcement. Come on, Catholics, get the church to, I told Johnny Mac. Johnny Mac's he says I'm a former Catholic because he doesn't go to church anymore. I said, Johnny Mac, it's a great day to get back to church. It's a great day to get back to church. All right. So we'll see if he does it. I doubt it. All right. But I at least told him. So if you're listening, get to church, everybody. All right. I love all you guys. I appreciate all of you guys. See you next time, everybody, on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365. the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.